Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the warm introduction, Edgar. And as mentioned, I've been a part of Native philanthropy for a long time, about 17 years, but really happy to join the team here at Decolonizing Wealth Project. I'm also a member of the Navajo Nation, and I'm also a member of the Liberated Capital community. So really pleased to be here with all of you. I'm going to start by introducing all of our speakers that we have here today, and then we'll go through a round of questions. If you, as audience members, do have questions, please leave them in the chat, and we'll save some time at the end to answer some of the questions. So I'm going to start by introducing Tela Trogue, Esquire, who is the project director of the Shinnecock Kelp Farmers in Southampton, New York. She's a member of the Shinnecock Nation and the Hassanimisco Nipmuc. Next, we have Darrell Hillaire, the Executive Director of Children of the Setting Sun Productions in Bellingham, Washington, and he is a member of the Lummi Nation. We also have Matt Wilson, the Deputy Director of Siçaŋġu's Community Development Corporation in Mission, South Dakota, and also a member of the Siçaŋġu Lakota Nation. So let's go ahead and welcome our wonderful speakers that we have here today. I'm going to start with an opening question. Tell us about the work that you're doing that is supported by the Indigenous Earth Fund. How does your work reflect traditional knowledge, and how is it shaping climate resilience or land and resource protection in your community?
I can start with the work of the Shinnecock Kelp Farmers. We're located in the area generally known as the Hamptons. So we're surrounded by some of the wealthiest folks in the entire country, but our ancestral waterways are devastated by really catastrophic pollution due to complete lack of septic systems in our area, which has caused a huge problem with nitrogen, which is just creating dead zones. So our solution is to grow seaweed, which is a specifically sugar kelp, which acts as a way to reoxygenate the water and bring life back. And so we're intergenerational Indigenous women just on a mission to use what little resources we have to make a big difference. And we've had a lot of success in cultivating in a hatchery, a nursery, where we provide a lot of love and care to our kelp seedlings and get them out into the water where they can do the really important work of cleaning up. And we use our ancestral knowledge of the moon cycles and species migrations to bring life back to our people so that we can maintain our traditional lifeways. We've been here for at least 13,000 years since the last ice age, and we're really putting all of our efforts towards keeping our traditions alive for future generations. And the support of the Indigenous Earth Fund has been very, very critical in helping us to do this really important work. So I thank all of you.
Thanks so much, Tela. Darrell, would you like to respond? Wait, hold on. Let's unmute you, Darrell.
Well, good morning. I'd like to thank everybody for this time together. Here at Children of the Setting Sun, we're a storytelling organization, Native-led storytelling organization. So we've been, in the beginning, telling our story to really gain recognition as a people. But then as we went along here, a couple things happened. COVID-19 for one, it caused a need to gather the people and over the internet, and we did that. But then we identified ourselves as the salmon people here at Lummi, and through the technology and through the internet, we found that there are many tribes across the country that identified as salmon people. So we started the Salmon People Project, which highlights the importance of that lifeway being central to protecting the environment. And because the values and the connections to the river and the water and salmon are key to our lifeway, we noticed that tribes up and down the coast are the leaders in removing dams and protecting rivers and cleaning up the environment. So this fund here has been right in the middle of that kind of effort with the funding that we've supported, gotten support of our work.
Matt, would you like to tell us about your work?
Yeah, thank you. Hamadaka Matt Wilson and Machepalo, Jante Washena, Pages Apolo. Good morning, everybody. My name is Matt Wilson, and I work for Siċaŋġu Community Development Corporation, and we're a part of Siċaŋġu Co., which is a larger indigenous ecosystem. And we're working to rebuild food systems here on the Rose Reservation. We're located in South Central South Dakota. And so our goal is really to restore our relationship to land, to food, to water, and to our culture as well. All are a foundation to our sovereignty. But our work isn't just about food sovereignty or agriculture. It's about tribal self-determination. And food systems for us has been one of the clearest expressions of that sovereignty. We always say we can't be truly sovereign if we can't grow and produce our own food. So when we are able to do that, grow our own food, raise our own buffalo, teach our youth, ancestral practices, we're reclaiming power that colonization has tried to take from us. And so with coming from the food sovereignty initiative is kind of where I'm recently kind of transitioned from. We create pathways for beginning farmers through our farm apprenticeship program. We operate community farmers markets. I think we're one of the biggest farmers markets in our region. And we feed hundreds of families through our food box program. But our work, it goes deeper than that. It touches on also like indigenous health and wellness, language and culture, and identity. All things that are needed to make a person whole and truly show up as themselves. And so when we plant seeds or plant a garden or forage, we're reconnecting to the Lakota names of those plants. When we cook a meal and host that meal with our community, we're healing our bodies and our spirits. When we mentor youth, on the land, we're building that pride and that purpose, and ultimately building the next generation of land stewards. And so I would say that this Indigenous Earth Fund has really supported us in allowing us to deepen those efforts, especially in regenerative agriculture, or what I like to call indigenous lifeways, and land stewardship practices. These are all techniques, rotational grazing, soil restoration. They're all techniques that have been grounded in ancestral wisdom and modern climate science. And I would say we don't really view climate resilience as just as an adaptation, but as a way of cultural revitalization.
Great. Thank you so much for each of you kind of giving us an overview of your work. I'm going to ask this question. I think each of you touched on it already, but maybe we can go a little bit deeper. What are some of the most pressing environmental challenges that your communities are facing, and how are you approaching those in culturally grounded ways?
So for us here at Shinnecock, dealing with the nitrogen pollution, we've seen just devastation to our fisheries. President Biden, during his administration, declared our waterways a national fisheries disaster zone because we had a 99.99% die-off in our shellfish. Back in the 70s, a lot of our tribal members went to the Lummi School of Aquaculture and brought back this science and art of growing shellfish. And so that's really helped us. But with the just really devastating overpopulation of our area after COVID-19, a lot of people fled from New York City out to the east end of Long Island where we're located. The problem just grew to catastrophic proportions. And so it was really even more critical for us to leverage what resources we did have to help the shellfish out in the water. So in addition to the nitrogen, we're having a lot of problems with carbon causing ocean acidification, which is like degrading the strength of the shells of our shellfish. And it's devastating not only our primary food source, our protein, it's really threatening and jeopardizing the impact of a type of shell that we use from clams. It's called wampum, and it's a way that we tell stories and we convey kinships and relationships and transmit traditional knowledge. And so by being able to be out in the water and farm sugar kelp, we're able to sequester carbon and remove nitrates and reoxygenate the water. And we have been really, really lucky to be able to see a vast increase in terms of biodiversity and the amount of marine life and marine relatives that have been able to come back and restore a lot of those migration pathways. Our ecosystem is incredibly delicate. It's very important for some of the world's most endangered species. Use our waterways as nurseries for their juvenile young. And so the work that we're doing to steward and to replenish and restore and regenerate, it's been way beyond what we had initially thought, which would be like measuring, little particles of nitrogen and carbon, but we've been able to actually realize in a very real and observable way the impact that we've had in a short time. We've been on this mission since 2019, and we've really been able to combat it. And we've also been able to do a lot of power building in terms of getting our elected officials to realize that there's a problem with the water quality. And we recently were able to help lobby for a proposition known as Prop 2 that for the first time ever leveraged a tax on all retail sales to create for the first time since colonists arrived in our area in 1640, wastewater treatment centers, as well as sewers and individual septic systems for homeowners to have a long-term solution to the problems that we're facing. And so it's been really beautiful work. It's also restorative to like the body. We go out and we farm. We don't use boats or anything that increase carbon. We literally go out in waders, and it's really a great feeling to feel the water just embrace you and be able to see firsthand the impact that we're having. And as women, it's really important for us to be able to protect this food source for not only ourselves, but for everyone and for our future generations. So it's been really restorative to both ourselves and our community, but also to the entire ecosystem.
Thank you so much.
Oh, that's awesome. We should end it right here. That was great. Hey, the work that we've been doing for the last 5 or 6 years is within our Salmon People Project, and the documentation of those people that identify as salmon, and that critical question, well, who are we without salmon? And that is pretty alarming when you think about it for those people that have been on the water since time immemorial. And not just at Lummi, but within the whole Coast Salish territory, which is here in what they call the Puget Sound, but also down to the Klamath River and the dam removal efforts down there. We're working with the Columbia River and Snake River tribes to support their story and what needs to be done to remove the dams from the Snake River. But the highlight of our work is with the Elwha people, the lower Elwha people, who were the first to remove a dam from their river. And like overnight, the salmon came back. And after 13 years of not fishing due to the almost extinction of salmon, they're fishing once again. So we're highlighting the efforts that tribes are doing to bring back the ecosystem within their homelands, and salmon being the key indicator of the health and well-being of the ecosystem. We're showing what the threats are, but also how our indigenous lifeways are leading the way in restoration of these ecosystems in the different river basins up and down the Pacific coast, beginning with Elwha and them now 13 years in are fishing once again. And then down at the Klamath River, we were there to witness the removal of 4 dams there and what that means to them now and the restoration of the entire river. And they were like, as one dam was coming down, they were already replanting the plants and trees and vegetation along the riverbanks for salmon to come home to. So that's really been our efforts, is to show leadership, highlight leadership from our indigenous communities that's bringing all communities together to protect what is really important to all of us, and that's the health and well-being of salmon. So, and leading into the future though, there's a mandate up here in the state of Washington called the Since Time Immemorial Mandate, where all of the school systems are required to have Native Studies programs in their school systems. Well, we've been engaging with our content to supply them with our films around treaty rights, around sovereignty, around salmon, our lifeway, our culture, our song and ceremonies. And we've been quite successful developing a model that's being recognized across the state of Washington as being very helpful to meet that mandate. It's unfunded, so we've actually been just volunteering our work, building curriculum around it, getting it into the school system. And we're also going up to what is historically a red community here in our neck of the woods, and has always been an adversarial relationship. But we're going to host a film festival up there to begin the education of folks that live in that area, so that when we get to water adjudication, they know who we are. They know what we stand for. They know what our values are. And then you take away all those unknowns, which feeds to, with all that negativity and conspiracies and the like when they know us, So we're doing that on the front end up in this community, so that when we get to adjudication here within the next 2 years, they have some, some basis to have that conversation with us.
Thanks so much, Darrell. And just as a point of reference, when you talked about the Since Time Immemorial curriculum, I know that that's something that was advocated so strongly by folks like John McCoy in Washington State to actually pass that and to make sure that school systems throughout Washington State could do that. And it's been a model to other states around the nation. So thanks for raising up the visibility of that.
Yeah. You're welcome.
All right, go next. I think for us in our community here on Rosewood, we're seeing a lot of the ecological impact of extractive agriculture and infrastructure projects. Both ignore the needs of the land and people. And there's actually quite a bit of food that is grown and produced on Siċaŋġu lands, but it's often grown by non-Indigenous producers who lease tribal lands, and then that food that's produced just gets exported, off reservation, and I don't know where it goes next. But the non-Indigenous lessees use conventional agricultural practices that are very extractive and utilize a lot of pesticides and other chemicals. And because they aren't from the community, they don't really have that connection to the land, and they don't really prioritize its health. It's all transactional to them. So our community is facing, degraded soils, lack of, food access. Extreme weather events here on the prairie, we get a lot of wind, recently getting a lot of tornadoes. And so a lot of this disconnection from, you know, land due to colonization and forced dependency is really showing up in our community in different ways. And so our approach has always been, you know, repair and reconnect. So we're restoring, you know, food and ecological systems by elevating those cultural practices, community leadership, and then really engaging with our youth. So one of the biggest projects we're working on today has been our Kewakpala Gardens. It's a 1 acre teaching and production farm. We do a lot of programming there with youth and adults, really getting them into trying to rebuild that relationship with land and with food. And so we're also teaching them the kind of the why, which is really the big important piece. You know, why Lakota people have always lived in balance. You know, why buffalo, you know, why prairie ecosystems are so sacred. And you know, why and how is food medicine. And so we're really working towards rebuilding that relationship. And so at a larger scale, we're also working with Redco, Rosewood Economic Development Corporation, which is one of our sister companies within our ecosystem, to take back 104 acre center pivot fields. We currently have about 2,000 acres of organic farmland that we kind of release to different producers, but we've taken back one of those fields this past year, taken it out of production. And so normally it would have been leased out and, you know, monocropped with like corn or something. But this year we've been able to replant some cover crop that will help rebuild that soil. And during this time, we're hoping to really plan out what that field looks like and how we can apply regenerative agriculture techniques to be more mixed vegetable production. And so we're really excited what that's going to look like. I don't know a lot of people who are even doing that at a larger scale, and especially with center pivot lands. So that's just kind of one of our approaches that we're trying to be, you know, both innovative, but also, you know, just trial and error. So we're really excited for that project.
Great, thank you so much. And that is really exciting work that, you know, reclaiming some of that farmland and stewarding it in your own ways and using your own cultural teachings. I have another question, and I know I've talked to some of you about this in the past, but you know, I think we're all aware of just some of the changes that have happened in the last 6 months or so. So, what external factors are impacting your work at this time? And that could be the political, budget cuts, rollback of climate policies, anything like that that's been impacting your work. Like, we'd love to know more about that.
For us at Shinnecock, a lot of our problems are both political, um, our right to sovereignty over the sea is consistently challenged. I am a practicing attorney, and so, you know, you name it, I've done it, practiced on federal courts, state courts, and our right to do what we're doing and to fish and to exist, our basic rights to hunt, fish, and gather, which have been protected by our ancestors, are continuously questioned to this day. And that's basically questioning our right to exist as people. And so it's a challenge. The Shinnecock kelp farmers just worked with the Native American Rights Fund and the National Congress of American Indians to submit an amicus brief in a federal court case on behalf of Shinnecock fishermen who are facing felony prosecution for fishing in our waterways. But for me, you know, as an attorney, I found that the best way to exercise our sovereignty is out in the water and is out doing the things that our ancestors have protected for us to do. But it goes into this larger political sphere of facing economic terrorism by our state and our state's Department of Environmental Conservation, who are consistently trying to dictate what we can and cannot do, while at the same time completely mismanaging our natural resources and our fisheries. And for a long time, you know, most of our tribal members live in just horrific poverty. and we're living, I mean, the economic juxtaposition, if you visited our territory and saw the way that we're living, and then you just go out to the edge of our tribal territory and look out across the water, you're looking right at Billionaires Lane, which is like $275 million estates, and it's really jarring. So the lack of resources to really combat the really devastating effects of capitalism and colonialism has always been a challenge. But just in the past couple of years, we've really been able to concentrate on power building and leveraging the capital that we do have access to make these assertions of sovereignty and to provide solutions. It's been really important to us as we make our models of sustainability that we not ever be dependent on federal sources of funding. So for us, having access really for the first time to philanthropy has been game changing and life changing for a number of our tribal members, and to our legal strategies to be able to meaningfully change this notion that we have no right to exist and we have no rights to the economic bounties of the sea. And it's been really life-changing, but challenging at the same time.
Mhm.
Can you restate the question?
What external factors are impacting your work at this time? And that could be political, it could be federal budget cuts, rollback of climate policies as just a couple examples.
Well, we've been through determination before, and this whole thing about treaty rights, they've never really been upheld, by the United States over time, so I don't want to say we're used to it, but we're familiar with, how the political climate is unfolding now. It's something that we had experienced in the 50s when the whole termination era was upon us, I'm just restating what my parents and grandparents said to me about this, But I think what really is something that we have to admit, and then once we recognize it, have a cause for unity of what we're doing. I just enjoy my colleagues here sharing their story. We got to bring these stories together and unite. There's real power in that, because the climate crisis is here. It's here, and we're living through it. And we got to get ready for it to accelerate, and we're going to need each other. So that's what we're doing now. We're gathering forces around all of this good work that Indigenous people are doing, not just in this country, but around the world. We've had people here from Russia, people here from New Zealand. We even had a guy from Wales, for crying out loud, wants to bring salmon back, and we're going to help him, We need that voice. We need that voice that carries the values that we hold dear to our heart, because that's what the ancestors left us, this responsibility for Mother Earth, and that's universal in Indigenous communities. Bringing that together, I think, is really important.
Thanks, Darrell. I think for us on Rosebud, one of our major challenges is, underfunding for both rural and tribal infrastructure, especially for Indigenous-led climate initiatives, especially, now more than ever. I think also being in the state of South Dakota, we're impacted by state and federal policies that continue to prioritize industrial agriculture and prioritizing policies that go against tribal sovereignty. I think just recently, changed at the national level in terms of climate commitments. All this rollback, I think, is really, it's scary sometimes, and it threatens our very ecosystems we're trying to heal and protect. I think despite these challenges, this is something that Indigenous people and communities have, faced before. We've always had a rocky relationship with, the federal government. So I think we remain grounded in, community and our kinship networks, both both regionally and, across Turtle Island, that allow us to adapt and persist. I think we're always having to do more with less. And oftentimes the models that we're creating are a lot more, far more sustainable than mainstream systems. But I think what's needed for us is more long-term, multi-year, unrestricted funding to support and continue this work.
Mhm. That's always something that I am recommending to other funders too, is the long-term unrestricted funding. At this point, I feel like it's the gold standard that every funder should be offering. I have a question. I have just two more questions, but this one I'm going to ask of all of you. How has the support from the Indigenous Earth Fund helped you to scale or deepen your impact?
So for Shinnecock kelp farmers, we are currently embarking on a really exciting expansion of our hatchery. And so again, we cultivate our seedlings indoors because the water temperatures around us have just risen so rapidly that it's almost impossible for juvenile young of a lot of species to survive. And so we kind of take them out of their habitat and bring them indoors where we do all kinds of beautiful nurturing. We sing to them in Algonquin, which is our traditional language. We read our seedlings Joy Harjo's poetry. We have a kind words program where we invite youth to come and practice saying really nice things to our seeds as they're growing and get them ready to do the important work that they're going to do. But our kelp is genetically adapted to be able to withstand the rising sea level temperatures in a geographic region that spans from Long Island all the way up to the Cape Cod of Massachusetts. And so the funding that we were awarded has allowed us to expand our hatchery so that we are now at the point where we're able to produce enough seedlings, not only for our farm, but for farms all across Long Island and all up and down the region. We're often told that our seeds, they're better adapted to the temperatures and to the various, different things that can happen to them once they leave our care. And so a lot of our partners, which include, research universities and folks who have been doing this for a number of years, have had just catastrophic failures in their hatcheries. And so our ability to scale up, because we realize that, we could take action, but unless we are able to help others also take action, we're not going to be able to meaningfully mitigate and really adapt to the climate crisis. So it's always been our theory of change that, we scale up by empowering as many people as possible. So by building out this larger hatchery and being able to produce more seeds to provide the needs for everyone in our region, we've been able to experience, that very real impact of doing our part, but being able to spread it out and really just getting that much more oxygen into the water, creating that much more habitat for species, and then increasing our ability to get as much carbon sequestered from the water and extract as much nitrates as possible, as well as, again, the power building of politically leveraging programs that work on land-based solutions as well, has been really, really great. We're so, again, fortunate and thankful to have the support of the Indigenous Earth Fund to be able to scale up in this way.
Thank you so much, Tela. I feel like I've learned so much about kelp farming from you, in not just in this conversation, but past ones. So thank you so much.
Well, for us, it's really, our wheelhouse is our efforts to gather the people. We're good at gathering the people, and we've been doing that through our Salmon People project, but now we've taken it to another scale. And this is an invitation to all of you that are on this call today. We're going to have our second annual gathering at the Paramount Theater in Seattle on November 18th. And it's a gathering of performers and as well as speakers from around the country. And we're going to host it on November 18th during the National Congress of American Indians. And while we're doing this, we're also going to take the time to recognize past leadership and thank them for what they brought forward into this generation. And we also want to highlight where we're at, and Seattle being the name that they chose to place upon the city. It comes from Chief Sealth, the leader of our people at the Point Elliott Treaty signing. And we want to recognize his legacy during that time also. So it really is, when we talk about wealth, we're really rich people, and we're proud of what we carry, the gifts that we're responsible for. And maybe some of the people that have a lot of money are very poor. And so we share with them what we think is a view of the world that's needed today. That practice of gratitude and that practice of generosity is needed now more than ever. And that's central to our Indigenous values and our Indigenous practices. And that's what we really want to bring out and highlight.
I think for us at Siċaŋġu CDC, one of our biggest, core principles has always been building leadership within our community. So one of the clearest ways I would say is that this fund has helped us has been to invest in our people, our team, our youth, our local producers. It takes time, resources and coaching and mentorship to be able to take people from our community to build them up into these positions that we need them to do. But it's what's sustainable, and it's what's worked for us. Because we're so place-based, it's hard to bring in outsiders from our community to really understand why this work is so important. So we've been building our own leadership. And I think another way too is that one of our biggest projects now is really expanding upon our 1 acre teaching farm. We're currently finishing up the designs to expand it from 1 acre to 7. Part of this expansion will include infrastructure, such as an outdoor 3-season classroom where we can host more land-based classes. It'll have Indigenous fruit and nut orchard, getting people more access to foods that they don't always get access to, and additional infrastructure. So 2 more greenhouses that we'll be able to use for both food production and plant nurseries. So our community has a local option to source, starter plants, and then just overall more acreage for perennial food production. But I think looking at it from like a high level and across the ecosystem, this fund has really helped to shift from survival mode to more strategic planning, allowing us to think beyond, just this grant cycle and towards more long-term generational impact.
Great. Thank you so much. So we are almost out of time, but I do want to ask one final question, and I'll give you each about a minute to respond to this. What would you like donors and allies to understand about the long-term vision of Indigenous-led land stewardship or sea stewardship?
So for us, it's a perfect bridge. So after we grow our sugar kelp, we actually dry it and we return it to the soil to complete the nitrogen cycle that's essential for plants to thrive on land. So far, we have used all of our kelp to help farms who are producing food, land-based agricultural food, and they grow it for food pantries. But for me, I think it's really critical that we're able, as Indigenous people and Indigenous women, to leverage the traditional knowledge that has been passed down to us generation after generation after generation. that's been able to sustain our populations. And so there's really this sometimes disconnect, I think, in mainstream society between the land and the sea. But for us, we're really trying to bridge that gap and show that everything is interconnected and that we need clean land and clean water in order to protect the land and defend the land so that we can produce food and that we can continue to exist. And support and understanding and willingness to listen and be open to our worldviews is going to be critical to being able for all of us to enjoy and regenerate and restore a lot of what colonialism and capitalism has damaged in our society. And so we're really grateful to this beginning of rebalance. And it will take resources to do that and to accomplish the work. And really centering Indigenous people will be key to building the future that we're going to all depend on.
Thank you, Tela.
Well, I guess these are closing comments. I would really encourage folks that have resources to be of the mind to want and to move towards not just being a funder, but being a partner and get real relationships going and talk about what we can do together for the next generation and things that we want to leave for our children and our grandchildren. And the other context is time. I don't think we have much time, with the current state of our political system, the current state of the climate, and the growing inequity, and I just really fret over what we're doing to those people that have less than we do and how that inequity continues to grow. So together we can take a stand, separately we're almost powerless, but together we can do some things that will make a positive change. So that's what I encourage.
Thanks for that, Darrell. Kind of want to piggyback off of Tela's comment earlier. Just that like Indigenous-led land stewardship isn't just a program. It's a life way. It's a worldview. And it's about living in relationship with land, with water, with all beings. In my culture in Dakota, we call this wodakuye. So it's just that understanding the interconnectedness and interdependentness of everything. And I think a lot of times as humans, we put ourselves above all of that. And in terms of like philanthropy, I would say I would just like people to know that change takes time. True stewardship is not about quick outcomes, but lifelong, intergenerational commitments that we have as Indigenous people. And all of this work is rooted in, trust and relationships, and that takes time. It just simply can't be rushed. And I think my last comment would be, if you want to support Indigenous land work, you also have to support Indigenous people, language, ceremony, and governance, because it's all connected. And you can't just focus on one thing without focusing on all the other things as well. So, thank you.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to learn from each of you. I'll just say it's an honor to support all of your work through our Indigenous Earth Fund. And for those of you that are out there and contributing to this fund, just really deep appreciation for that. We have the Indigenous Earth Fund grant cycle just reopened yesterday. So really excited to invest another $1 million into work like this. I do see we have one question. Please feel if there's something I missed in the chat, let me know. But we do have a question for Tela about how do you use, process, share, and/or market the kelp? And also if you've been able to study the carbon sequestration achieved with the kelp for us.
Yeah, so it's a great question. So we use traditional methods. We dry using the sun. We're really cognizant of not adding any more of our carbon footprint. But we really look back to the original ways that corn, beans, and squash grow. And you know, we have this problem of an overabundance of nitrogen in the waterways and this lack of nitrogen available to land-based plants. And so we're able to add we call it a soil amendment. It's not a true fertilizer, but once we dry our sugar kelp, we use it as a soil amendment, and it really increases the yield and productivity and bioavailability of nitrogen. It really allows crops to flourish. And so we've been able to find all kinds of creative solutions. It's actually also been really helpful in plants resiliency. Our tribe just embarked on a cannabis venture, and we found that by adding seaweed to cannabis, it's been able to overcome some viruses, which have been really devastating in the Northeast. And so the potential for seaweed, it's really unlimited. Due to the poor water quality, we do only use it as a soil amendment. But there's a lot of possibility in terms of bioplastics, biofuel, cosmetics, as well as being a very high density food source as well in terms of nutrients. But we market it mostly through farmers markets. It's really critical. I saw a lot in the chat about like AI and all of these things. And you know, protecting water resources is critical, defending land is critical, but kinship networks and creating community is very important to us, and strengthening our local community is very important to us. So we try to be very active within our community and to share our knowledge. This is how plants were grown here. This is how, you know, the United States was able to grow corn by adding fish and seaweed to that as a staple crop, and that really cultivated society here in America. And so we try to just share that knowledge and market it that way. And we have plans again to be able to provide the seed to our jurisdiction. Just opened up 500 seaweed lots, and so we're able to help shellfish producers co-culture their shellfish together with seaweed, but then be able to be the market and the brand to distribute the kelp, so that it's not another thing that aquaculture folks have to do. And so we've been really successful. But again, I think cultivating that sense of community has been most impactful. And I think that's how we're going to survive some of the devastation that we're about to see with AI and the threats to our society linked to that.
Thank you so much, Tela. I really appreciate just all the words and the wisdom that you all shared with us. Edgar, I'm going to turn this back over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Dana, and thank you to all of the guest speakers. Very profound. I'm deeply, deeply moved by your work and what you shared today. And just, yeah, thanks for lighting a fire under us about this work and how important it is that we continue to center Indigenous wisdom and worldview in this in our attempts to address the climate crisis. You know, we have had some recent setbacks, you all, in climate and conservation efforts in this political environment, but we are still deeply, deeply committed to continuing to support this work and to support Indigenous leaders who are still getting work done at the local level, as you heard today, and are still fighting and pushing for work at the national level in our ecosystem. And what we do know that if we don't continue to center Indigenous leadership, that the climate crisis will persist. And so we're excited, as Dana shared today, to announce $1 million in new funding that will be available to partners. And I just want to thank you all who have given to this work so faithfully, supporting you know, the work of Liberated Capital to provide this unrestricted funding to these partners. And we hope that you will check out our moonshot online. We are turning up the heat and really going big to do more for our communities. And so please check that out and do what you can to increase your giving if that's possible. Invite friends to join Liberated Capital. A key strategy in achieving this moonshot is to grow this community significantly, because we need big money. We need to fund community leaders like we want them to win. Just for a point of reference, we have received $6 million in requests from Native leaders for climate and environmental support, and we've only had $1 million, which we're thankful for. But we know that if we could adequately resources movement, so much more can be done to save Mother Earth. So thank you for doing what you can. We so appreciate you and wish you all, please be well, take care of yourselves, and thank you again for being a part of our community. Thanks, everybody. Take care.